Hello, everyone. I am Nicole Chavarria, the Digital Marketing Manager here at LNDTS, and I'm super excited to have Shannon Culbertson, our Protection and Control Engineering expert on our team. Shannon, it's so great to see you today.
Thanks. Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. So I know our LinkedIn audience is very engaged and really wants to know much more information about PNC engineering from an expert's perspective. So I had a few PNC related questions if you can answer them for me today.
I'll do my best.
Awesome. So the first one, just for people, let's say, who are just starting out their engineering career and they're thinking about to see if this is a field they want to get into, how would you define protection and control engineering for someone who's just starting out and unfamiliar with the field?
I would say that at its core, it's keeping the lights on. So if you're interested in making sure that your power stays on, your family's power, and that it not only stays on today, but for the future to come, the next generations, we're trying to create that technology to make sure that we have sustainable future for everybody.
Yeah, super important. I know definitely could have used more PNC knowledge when we had a power outage earlier in the week, so super helpful. And then for people that love like the more technical side, what are the typical like systems and components that an engineer like yourself works with on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So anything from power generation at your generation facilities, and those are becoming much more complex. Whereas we used to have just a few modes of generating power, now we have multi modes, especially with renewables online. So anything from there through your transmission distribution lines, all the way to your consumers at your houses or at we typically don't work in residential stuff, but some of your larger industrial utilities, those kind of places, your automotive manufacturing, for example, things like that, they'll rely on us as well.
Um, And then a question about you personally. Earlier in your career, when you were deciding which engineering discipline to get into, what made you choose PNC?
My road was a starting in the trenches, so to speak, almost literally. I started in the IBEW as an apprentice electrician, so
Hmm.
it kind of was a natural progression for me to want to stay in the electrical field. Um, Going into a PNC route, though, I always liked computers as well. So this was kind of the joining the physical with the brains of what happens. Pipe and wire, it sends those signals, but playing with the brains was really fun, really interesting.
Well, and it's a discipline that really stimulates you intellectually the most.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Physically too, we still have a lot of demands. A lot of this test equipment is really heavy. We have to go on job sites that are maybe not complete. There's a lot of hazards just to get to the brain, but it's fun. Every day's a challenge.
So I love being challenged, or else you get bored. So it's very
Exactly.
important. And yeah, and it sounds like LND is a place that every new project is a new challenge for you. Is that right?
We're really fortunate, a lot of guys go into, they think PNC, so they'll naturally think utility. So they'll work for a utility, which is great. We definitely need utilities and guys working at the utilities, right? But L&D and is one of those places where we're afforded the opportunity to work with multiple utilities. So utilities love to create standards, right? Which works for them. It's great, but not all utilities use the same standards. So we get that breadth of working across the industry from one coast to another and worldwide and seeing what tactics do these other utilities use. And then we'll bring that information to the other customers of ours and share that knowledge so that we can kind of tweak these standards to be better.
Amazing. Awesome. And then for people who also are a little bit more unfamiliar with the field, what would you say, in your expert opinion, are like the top five things that someone needs to know about PNC engineering when they're first starting out?
Uh, you need to love math. If you don't love math, you will not love this job. We have to go off the premise that of of what a power system behavior is going to look like based on
Mhm.
all of the information we have over the past couple hundred years. So we've learned how they behave, and we need math to model that system. You need good decision making skills. A lot of
Mhm.
times, like with most things, there's a give and take. So where there's usually a matrix that's looking at sensitivity, stability, and cost, and you'll have to design within those parameters to get the sweet spot. Um, it takes practice, a lot of it. No one starts out in this field knowing everything and is good at everything. I still don't know everything, and I'm still not the greatest at everything. So that's what keeps it fun, right? And if you get into commissioning, like I enjoy, then you're going to have to buckle in for some long hours potentially, and a lot higher stress. There's more action going on when you get to that part of the process. But at the end of the day, it's really rewarding. It's nice to see news articles where another 300 megawatts or whatever is being added to has been successfully integrated for a new community. So that's a good feeling.
And then I feel like you've kind of observed a lot of changes in the field over the years. So, how would you say, let's say, as technology becomes more modernized each year, how has that affected, like what you just mentioned, the practice aspect of it, the commissioning aspect? Like, how have you seen firsthand technology affect those areas?
There's loads of new technology in this particular field, especially. Like I said, with renewables coming on this, and they've made a giant presence, and they're continuing to make they're not
Mm-hmm.
slowing down. They're still growing. I'm actually commissioning on-site a renewable facility now, specifically with BESS, a solar and a BESS system, battery energy storage system. So that's that's way newer than our old coal factory days, where we were just burning coal and making power. It's a totally new concept. With data centers, you see those a lot in the news, and they have an enormous demand for power. And how is that going to integrate into our grid and maintain that stability? Sensitivity is one thing, but we don't want things to cascade. And just because a data center wants to turn off, we don't want an entire community to lose their stability on their power system. So those are challenges that we're facing today that are newer to us as a society, an engineering society. So we definitely need those professionals to get it figured out.
Makes total sense. And then I know you mentioned before, like starting off kind of more on the electrician side and then navigating your way here. Is that a path that you would recommend someone to get a lot of that hands-on practice, both with like the commissioning aspect and the decision making and math that you mentioned? Or would you say someone should start off maybe earlier in their career working for a utility first and then navigating their way? What's like your best recommendation?
So there's different strokes for different folks, right?
Sure.
We all have our comfort zones in life, and either of those options are totally viable. Uh,
Mhm.
I tend to prefer the more hands-on approach where
Mhm.
you understand the physical before you go into the theoretical, because a lot
Mhm.
of times they're not a one-to-one match, and that's fun trying to figure out where one needs to give and take to make it work. Uh,
Mhm.
so understanding those concepts are pretty important. And the IBEW apprenticeship program was really great at offering classes for both. It's definitely not an engineering level kind of class, but it definitely gives you that foundation for understanding motors and principles of power delivery. Those are really important. Um, there's a lot of discussion in today's news about uh, the value of a 4-year degree, um, but I think that there's a need. We have need for 4-year education, but we also have need for things that don't require that. So it just depends on where you're focused. If you love math, I would encourage continuing in that 4-year degree because you'll get a lot of it, and then when you come out, you'll be able to continue using it in your career throughout. if you don't love math, there's still opportunities for you here. You don't have to be strong in math to assist with the physical or assist with a lot of the apparatus testing and commissioning. There's still a giant need for all of those things. So there's room for everybody, whichever path you want to take.
Perfect. So it sounds like there is a lot of different options for people that play on each, like different types of strengths.
Absolutely.
So I love that about engineering. And now we're getting into the good stuff, all about renewables. And I know renewable energy sources are a big value at LND here, which I feel like you also share as being a prominent member of our team. So, in your experience, how have you seen renewables kind of change the face of PNC engineering over the years?
So again, we go off of the basis of understanding how the system behaves. Um,
Mhm.
Addressing these new types of energy, these new types of generation, we have to figure out how are they going to interact with our known behaviors? Are they going to respond the same way that our modeling that we've had for many, many years, is it going to maintain that? Or is this something new that we need to accommodate? There are situations on both sides of that spectrum. There are very new behaviors because the very inverters work very differently than generators. They're not a rotating machine. They don't have torque. It's a very different concept. So there's new challenges when you're, especially at the testing and commissioning stage, to ensure that the behavior that we know to be modeled on the grid is going to work seamlessly with this new system that doesn't doesn't follow all of the rules that the grid typically demands.
And have you seen, is there one particular type of clean energy that you think behaves the best with like current known systems?
You know, they as a conceptual environment, they're all very, very similar. Like I said, anything that doesn't use a rotating machine has a different you know, those inverters have different behaviors than the rotating machinery that we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of wind versus solar, they each have their strong suits.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just depends on that's dictated a lot more about where. Uh,
Okay.
you definitely don't want to put solar in a place that never gets sun, and you don't
Right.
want to put wind turbines in a place that doesn't get wind. So they're
Mhm.
dictated more by geography than their application.
Okay, that makes total sense. And I know L&D probably sends you on client sites and projects all over the US. Is there one particular location that you either enjoy working in the most, just based on environmental factors, or does that change depending on the client?
You know, the job sites are a lot the same. And when you're commissioning, there's like I said, there's long hours, so there's not a lot of downtime to enjoy whatever location you might be in. Uh, I typically favor the more coastal areas. I'm a beach guy. I really enjoy the beach. Um, but yeah, there's been fantastic projects all over. And I think that mostly what is a good project is the people that you get to work with there. Um, Anytime you're working with a good group of folks, it's way more enjoyable than maybe those that are under too much pressure or something and you know can enjoy the work environment
Okay, no, that sounds awesome. And I think we're really lucky that L&D has such a great team that makes it enjoyable to work with.
for sure. We have a great group
Yeah,
of guys and
amazing.
girls.
Yeah, can't forget that. And I know like one of the hot topic issues in engineering today is also what role does cybersecurity play in your day-to-day life and your responsibilities? So how would you say like has there been specific systems you've had to learn to kind of bring on to each project to ensure it's extra secure, or like how has that affected your day-to-day life?
Right, that's a good question. There's a lot of concern about people hacking our grid and things like that. So there are definitely rules that are in place. Most of them fall under the NERC requirements, North American Energy Reliability Council, and they define the steps that we must take whenever we're connecting to the bulk electric grid. That we're following stringent protocols to protect passwords and assets and just different various access controls. So yes, we undergo additional training at all of those sites. We're required to follow specific protocols. There's lots that goes into a sound cybersecurity system, and working on that, there's I guess it's worth mentioning that there are loads of different areas, like we talked before, not just the physical versus theoretical, and the hands-on on the apparatus versus relaying. But even within the relaying world, there's protection, and then there's automation, and there's even it seems that there are subsets in those that are specific for cybersecurity. So there's jobs that only focus on that aspect. Those are needed too, especially we have some conflicts going on today that kind of draw more attention to our vulnerabilities, and our electric grid does. We don't want that to be a vulnerability, right? That's very important to us.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. That's awesome that you are extra careful to ensure that those you're always adhering to those strict protocols.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. And then I know you mentioned before the different standards that different like utilities set when you're brought on to a new site and project. As time goes on and those standards evolve, how have you made sure like yourself, your skills, and your team that you manage also like evolves with the standards as they change over time? Like, is there additional training you do quarterly? I know you just hosted the power transformations training. So how often do you kind of make sure that everyone is up to date with those current trends? I mean, current standards.
So that's a tough one. That's a hard one to answer because we still have a job we have to do, and then we have to work in that training time, and that's a very difficult balance to find. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that there's a specific timeline where like every 3 months or something like that. I think a lot of it is driven by what projects you're going to work on. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're noticing that you're working more in that renewable environment, or you're taking on these new data center projects or something like that, it's kind of a personal. You have to be personally motivated, that you want to understand what you're going to do on this job, how it works, what is different from the things that you already know. What do you need to be aware of on this specific project? So it's more of a project to project, whereas then we get together and try to share our lessons learned, so that the next guy or girl who goes out on this particular site, or one that's very similar, has that shared knowledge. Sharing knowledge, that's the key. We all try to share and grow together. Um, there were people in throughout my career that I think they felt that knowing something gave them job security, so they wouldn't share it with others. I don't subscribe to that mentality. I think that when we all know something, we're all better, and it doesn't make me less valuable because everyone knows what I know. I think it just makes me more valuable as a resource to share that knowledge, and people are more willing to share with me. So I get to grow more that way. I think we all do if we share that knowledge and move forward together.
I definitely agree. Community sharing over competition is always, I think, the best way. And then another question is, I know you mentioned that it completely depends on the role and the person, whether they want to specialize in more something more math heavy with a 4-year degree that might be helpful versus hands-on electric training. But is there a specific either certification or specialized training that you would recommend to anyone who wants to get into PNC?
Sure. Well, first off, safety is our most important goal. That we're
Hmm.
talking about dealing with electrical energy in the range of up to 750,000 volts. There's some 1,000 750,000 volts, and there's some systems that are up to 1,000 uh, kilovolts. So it's very high level, very dangerous places to be. So taking your safety classes, your OSHA 30 class, or your first aid CPR classes, those kind of things, they benefit everybody. It doesn't matter which discipline you're going into. Just having those skills are I think they're a must. All of our folks get trained in those with those certifications. They're not going to be unuseful to anyone. As far as any technical certifications. I would say depending on which sector you're wanting to get into, I would focus on something in that realm. So if you're interested in relaying, there are lots of free Schweitzer provided video tutorials, manuals, application guides, white papers. You can read up all you want or take their videos anytime. Like I said, a lot of this is personal motivation. So choosing, what you want to become more proficient in. If you want to stay on the more hands-on side, there's also a lot of equipment manufacturers like Omicron that gives a lot of training sessions and things like that for how to use their equipment, and not just how to use it, but why. What is it doing? And I think that's a very important mentality that people should have is uh, getting away from that just push a button, get a green check, and be more about what's happening when I push this button. Why is that green check uh, valid? So we try to be the latter and really focus on our job and understand the whys so that we can explain when someone asks us, why did this happen? We'll be more ready to be able to troubleshoot and respond for something like that.
So it sounds like natural curiosity and someone who thinks very analytically is like important qualities to have in this role.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And then I know it might be hard, but if you could summarize one piece of advice you would give to someone who is thinking about entering PNC engineering, what would you say is the most important
Do it. I would say do
thing?
it. I know a lot of times personal situations require that you can't jump into things as quickly as you would like, but if it's something that interests you, I would encourage you to seek out a mentor. That's my number one piece of advice is find someone who you can kind of shadow and learn more with. Choose them wisely. I would
Mhm.
say don't just pick someone because they're nice and they'll talk to you. Find someone who's knowledgeable in the field and willing to share that knowledge with you and grow
Mhm.
with them. And it doesn't hurt to have more than one mentor. There can be many, and they don't have to be the most PE decorated. It could be
Mhm.
someone who's worked in the field for a while, or it's been someone who is proficient at the apparatus testing. Anyone like that, we can learn from anyone. So
Yeah,
mentors are great. I would say mentor is the best.
awesome. So never underestimate the power of a good mentor.
Absolutely.
Amazing. And then one of my last questions for you is, I know you're a very prominent member of the LND team, but what would you say has been the best part about being a part of LND?
I love the freedom that LND provides to all of us. All of us as employees for LND has the freedom to uh, speak within our company. We all have a voice. We all get to be a part of decision making. We're all fairly treated and compensated. I really like the culture and environment at LND. It's a great place to work. I have no regrets since joining, and I'm looking forward to continued years of service.
I 100% agree. As someone who's on the L&D team, but on the non-technical side, I definitely think it's rare nowadays to find a company that doesn't micromanage you and really trusts your expertise and your workflow. And I definitely think this is a team that does that and values that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And that is all the questions I had for you, Shannon. Again, thank you so much for taking the time today to share your knowledge and expertise with me. I really hope that anyone who's an early engineer thinking about protection and control engineering or someone who just loves the field was able to get value from this conversation. So thank you again so much. And stay tuned for more information from the LND team next week. Ciao.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.